All right, so the agenda for today is mostly coming, like I said, from a DFA perspective. From finance, I can share, I created just a real brief agenda to kind of take a look at the items that we wanted to cover today. So starting off with a little bit of a discussion surrounding expense reports. So I don't know if, Debbie, you want Amy to go right into that, or if you wanted to kick off there.
I'll kick it off. I didn't get to print out my stuff. It has been a day of meetings since 8 o'clock this morning, and I took my first just quick break to the restroom and ran over here. So welcome everyone. It's really good to touch base. Happy Passover to anyone who is celebrating, and also, since I won't talk to you again, happy Easter for those who celebrate as well, and in general, happy spring. So let me just get started with saying that we have gotten a really good response coming from some of these calls afterwards with getting a lot of the expense reports moving. So we thank you for that. But as you may or may not know, there's about 1,000 budgets that have been awarded money. And so that, although we make little strides, they're not quite there. So we'll talk to you about that. But just to give you an idea of where we are in total, So this is as of the close of business last week. We had in the payments area across all the initiatives. So, just to briefly say, there was workforce development, there's stabilization, there's telehealth, there's transitional safety units, there's mobile medication units, there's OTPs, additional locations, across all of them, that we have 953 out of the 1,000 budgets that have been awarded. 953 are in the payments area being processed. And out of that, 944 are processed as of the end of last week. And that means that the total amount is $100.8 million that are going through payments area, which is really, that's quite exciting to be able to get that money out there. So in expense reports as of the end of last week, we've received 464 expense reports, and the total amount of dollars expended from those expense reports represents $20.8 million we've gotten expense reports for. And out of that 20.8, 13.6 million represents expense reports we've received that is over the advanced amount. So as many of you know, there's a 25% advance. We ask expense anyway. You don't have to wait till you've expended your full 25%. Send in monthly expenses. Some of you are doing that. Thank you. And what we're saying is that there's 13,000.6 that have been expensed to us that is above the advance. That's super wonderful. And then it's 20.8 in total. And so, our big concern, right, is that we need more expense reports in. So, and we need them in, right, that represent the time period in which you're submitting invoices to us to be reimbursed on. And we need the supporting documentation, which means we do need the invoices. And the way that like if you're at all confused about, because I know you have a lot of different funding streams and different things going on. So in the expense report we sent you when we gave you an executed contract, on the first tab, it gives you instructions on how to fill out the expense report, and it tells you what documentation, but also in your contract. You could go back to the attachment D and it will tell you what documentation you need. And it does vary slightly between which initiative it is. I would say that workforce and stabilization require the most documentation, but you just take a look at those. So I'm gonna switch for a moment and ask Amy to come on and just talk about more specifically about the telehealth expense reports. And the reason for that is because telehealth, that time period for being able to spend and send in expense reports, you know, the spending part has ended on March 14th of this year, 2023, and the expense reports need to be in by April 29th. And so I just wanted Amy to tell us, you know, where we are with receiving expense reports for those providers that have contracts with us for telehealth.
Well, we currently have not processed 52 contracts finals for telehealth. So doesn't mean we haven't received them yet, but they have not been completely processed. Of course, we keep getting some in every day, but as Debbie indicated, the deadline is coming quickly, and the sooner we get them to verify that they are valid, and by valid I mean that they're filled out completely, all the supporting documents are attached, and we don't have any questions. You know, and part of the supporting documents, you should identify what budget category the invoice pertains to, such as OTPS, equipment, or property and space, and also include the invoice, the payment information, including the date paid and the payment method, whether it was check or credit card. If it was check, include a check number. If it was credit card, include the last 4 digits of the credit card. And be sure that when completing the expense report, you fully complete the form. We receive some expense reports where the period covered is blank. So the period covered on the report should be when the expenses are paid. So everything attached should have been paid within the period covered on that report. And of course, sign and date all forms as well. And be sure to submit any expense reports to the COVID funds vouchers mailbox. And if you have any questions, of course, you can reach out to either the vouchers mailbox or the COVID funds AP mailbox as well.
I'm sorry, and Amy, can you tell me that number again for the contracts that still have not closed out yet?
52.
52, okay. And, you know, just to share, if you've handed in an expense report and, you know, it was, let's say, a week ago and you haven't heard anything and you have a question about it, you can put your question into the COVID funds voucher mailbox. But essentially, we are, our focus with that is getting the telehealth vouchers done as quickly as possible, you know, because we're closing that out on April 29th. And so we are hoping that if you are back and forth with us, say we've identified, you know, something that we need additional from you, we are hoping that you will also make that a priority to respond back to us so that we can make sure that you get your reimbursement. And here's the worst case scenario. If you are a provider that got telehealth and you haven't submitted your expense report, you know, and April 29th comes around and we sent you in advance, we will have to make arrangements to take that money back. And that's like the worst case, because this was, you know, COVID pandemic money that we wanted to provide to providers to keep you afloat and give you an opportunity to provide, you know, good service. So we're really hoping that all of these things that we've put into place with all the provider calls, the training on expense reports and so forth, you know, are helpful. And also, you know, any questions that you submit to the mailbox, that we are able to get back to you in a timely way that helps you be able to send in expense reports. So any of my colleagues, I don't know if anyone else wants to add anything. Connie, I didn't know, was there anything that you wanted to add before I go to the next thing?
You know, not just repeating what you've already said, Debbie, right? I mean, it's super important, obviously, that folks are spending the money. It's there for you to use. We need for you to get those expense reports in so we can account for the spending. This is a really important 12-month period that we're in terms of the no-cost extension, because we certainly want to make sure that no dollars are left on the table, right? And so able to identify if providers are having difficulty spending money or won't be able to fully utilize their contract amount, that we can recognize that so we can reallocate those dollars. So just important to stay on track. And certainly if you're having any challenges or issues, please do speak with your subject matter expert, your program initiative lead. Also, I know L'Oreal Aldi sits in on those meetings and is asking those questions and wants to hear that information as well. So spend.
Thank you very much. So then, you know, that kind of leads into the next topic of that, the next sort of group of initiatives that, you know, will be reaching their life are the workforce stabilization, primary prevention infrastructure grouping. They will end in June, and like I had mentioned earlier, you know, these required you know, potentially a little bit more backup documentation than you know, initiatives that followed them. They were one of our earlier offerings, and they offered a lot of you know, support in, you know, financial support, but it had some requirements, and I know that we often have a lot of back and forth on those expense reports. So as we're, you know, winding down to the finish of that, and that will be in, you know, in June, we wanted to give providers an opportunity to hopefully tap into our expertise in how to fill out these expense reports. So we're thinking of doing, we are going to be doing what's called expense report office hours. So, and I don't know if you remember the days, this might date me, but, you know, when I was growing up, when I got sick, I went to my primary care physician's office, because there were certain office hours that you walked and you went and you were on first come, first served seen. So imagine that. So what we want to do with the office hours is we actually want to offer an hour where we're available to answer direct questions on you putting your expense reports together for workforce stabilization and primary prevention infrastructure. And we will be sending an invite out for that. It'll be scheduled after the you know, Passover and Easter holidays. And you know, we're going to direct it to providers very specifically. There are a significant amount of providers that we still haven't had expense reports from who have these contracts. So we are going to target you with, you know, email communications, but we will give it to all providers that have received a contract for these specific initiatives. But an additional email will go out to those that we haven't heard from. And we will seek also to make sure that your, you know, executive directors of program are aware that we are, you know, setting up these office hours so that you as fiscal agents, or that whoever's on this call, contact your fiscal agents and say, we're going to have this communication, and that this is a great opportunity that while you're trying to, you know, fill out an expense report, you can talk to our payment staff, you know, live during this hour and ask any questions, you know, like, can I do this? Does it make sense to put this here? What, you know, what is needed here? Whatever you have as a question, you know, related to these initiatives, expense reports. So we're really hoping that this is helpful. And if it is, it will be something that we continue. You know, we'll do it a few times. And if we get a nice turnout and we're able to be helpful, then great, that's what it's for. So we really hope that you will take advantage of it. And like I said, the communication will be coming out, you know, shortly for an hour set up after the holidays. Anybody have questions? Well, I guess we'll find out if there's any questions in the Q&A afterwards, but And then I already covered, so that's everything that we had, I think, right, L'Oreal?
In our pre-planned agenda, yeah, that was everything that we had. Certainly wanted to leave enough time for questions and answers that anyone might have. I did put the COVID fund vouchers email address into the chat. So for submitting any vouchers, that would be that email address as a reminder.
So I guess we are opening it up to questions. And I originally said submit questions in the Q&A, and I am challenged and I can't even find a Q&A. So you can put them in the chat, wherever you can find. We will read it, or raise your hand. You know, and and you can ask a question about anything. It doesn't have to be about the agenda. You know, if there's a certain specific question that you have about your SAPT supplemental funded initiative, an expense report, you know, how the initiative's going, any type of question, you know, that's what we're here to provide some help and assistance.
I don't know, Debbie, maybe we've had enough sessions, we're communicating information, we're so far into SAPT Sup that everyone knows all the things they need to know. Anything we can answer or assist with? Wow, very quiet. Okay. Well, I don't want to keep folks on any longer than we have to, although I heard a breath. Did somebody have a question? No. Everyone will feel awkward now saying, actually, I do have a question. What's that?
Well, I say there is a question in the chat, it looks like.
Oh, what is the timeline from submission to voucher? Do you mean the turnaround time from submitting your voucher to payment? I think, is that the question?
That's how I'll interpret it, but Timothy, if you want to, if we're interpreting it incorrectly, if you want to add some more details, that's totally fine. But you know, the time frame takes about 4 weeks. Part of that is that even within our statewide financial system, it takes a few days for the payment to process. Also, okay, great. Thank you, Timothy. You know, the other thing too is like, we are highly focused on processing telehealth. It has a little bit of a priority above other payments. So that one will go much quicker. And then it depends on if we're having some back and forth with you, right? So if say we have a voucher that came in and it took us like a week and a half to get you into the, you know, be the priority to talk with, and then we see, oh, we need this. Well, then it's going to go back and forth with you before it actually gets processed. So, but I would say, you know, at the start of March, we were on March submissions of expense reports. And so, you know, I'd say about 4 weeks. So the next question that I see is there a way we can receive confirmation, of our expense reports were received via email? And that's a reasonable request. I don't think we may not have built that in. We can take a look at that, you know, and get back to you on that. And Amy, do you have any thoughts on that question in particular? Or do you want to go back and talk to the team?
Well, the expense reports are initially received in the vouchers mailbox, and then they're forwarded to payment.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, so can I jump in, Amy, on that? Because it does go to vouchers. And so I thought that our standard practice was to reply to an email that had an expense report attached to acknowledge receipt. I'm looking at L'Oreal right now as the leader of that, and she's shaking her head no. So know that going forward, Tanya, we are going to have a standard practice that once we receive a voucher in that voucher mailbox, that you will get a reply acknowledging receipt. Just for folks to be aware of the process that we go through in terms of processing those vouchers. And Debbie will keep me honest on this one. So we do go through a process of reviewing it once it comes into the mailbox. It is, assuming that everything checks on that initial review, it is then forwarded to our payments folks, who then also do a thorough review of the expense report. The payments entered into our system. I believe that there needs to be, I think there's OSC approval on payments. And so there's OSC approval on all payments before the actual payment can be made. So I say this to just share what we all know, right? Our process takes time. And so when you know that we've received the expense report and you get that acknowledgement now from the voucher mailbox, you can anticipate it does take a number of weeks for us to get through all of these processes and for the OSC approval, which is needed for our actual issuance of the payment. So that confirmation email is going to be the trigger that says, hey, we got it and we're starting our process working on it.
Connie, you are now officially a payment expert.
All right, Amy, can I get a job upstairs?
Sure, we could use all the help we can get.
All right. I'm available Saturdays and Sundays, some evenings and weekends, yeah.
So we can
right.
definitely implement that in terms of vouchers that we're receiving. What we do from workforce and stabilization point of view is once we send that, we've reviewed in my department that workforce or stabilization, send it along to AP. Then you would get an email from us letting us know that it's been sent to accounts payable, and barring anything unforeseeable, that it should take about 4 to 6 weeks. So that's what we are currently doing, but happy to add that into the process to let you know that we've received your voucher.
All right, other questions? Oh, who should we contact if our voucher and payment amount differ? Ooh, that's a good question, Kate.
You would reply to the COVID funds AP mailbox. We send out an email in reference to any payments that go out, which show your worksheet that we use to calculate your payment. So if you have a question on a specific voucher that you submitted and you received a payment and it's slightly different, it could have to do with, you know, agency admin that was above the allowable amount, or taking into account your advance payment that you received already. But yes, you can send an email to the COVID funds AP mailbox. And I ask that you, in your subject line, have your contract number and the initiative you're asking about.
And your provider number? Can't hurt.
Mm-hmm. Right, that's always a good thing to add, for sure. All right, other questions? No questions, a bad question.
No, and by the way, these are very good questions, actually,
Yeah.
so thank you.
All right, you know, I think it's great that we still have so many people joining these calls every month and interested in tuning in to hear about, you know, upcoming opportunities, issues around expense reports, our process. So I appreciate you guys joining. I know it's probably like the highlight of your month when we have these meetings and you have a chance to see all of our smiling faces and check in with us. I appreciate all the work that everyone's doing, and that's true of all of you who are, who are in receipt of these contracts and the work you're trying to get done, as well as the folks here at OASAS. Think of where we were. Has it been 2 years? I think has it been 2 years that we've been doing this? At least, right? Or a year and a half, you guys. We've been in this quite a while, and we still have a little ways to go. I think we've got about 2.5 years to go, right, till we get to the end of SUP 2. But, hopefully the process feels a little more smooth at this point. Hopefully people have those email boxes for all of the COVID funds questions, listed in your contact list, so you have that. We're always here to answer questions. You always have the COVID funds mailbox to reach out to, as well as the fiscal specific mailboxes. I don't want to keep folks longer than we have to, and maybe a half hour is enough. Oh, Debbie has her hand up.
I have one last update. It's just to share that when we offered the statewide SUD service support initiative funding, we had a limit of 20 million. It was first come, first served until we, were able to award up to 20 million. And just to share with you, we were able to make additional funding available, and we've stated this on other, on other calls, but I did want to let you know that the entire amount of applicants that were able to submit a valid application by that 5 o'clock deadline, it totaled 114 applicants. And we're happy to say that when we are all done with this process, which is going to be very soon, we have about a half dozen left to finish an award. We will have awarded almost $41 million. So no one got turned away that applied. So that's really exciting. And we're really happy that we were able to provide that, and look forward to seeing those expense reports for that money being spent.
All right, that's good news too. Yay. Okay, guys. Good seeing everyone. Thanks for joining, and I hope everybody has a really good spring holiday season, and I wish you all well, and we'll talk to you again next month. Take care, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.